Welcome to Off-Grid Victory. Today we're going to be talking about this guy. Now, this is a hazmat sign for flammable gases, and it's one of those topics that we don't really talk about on the homestead that often, but it is the primary fuel for a lot of homesteaders and farmers out here. And so, yeah, let's talk about it today and kind of the uses and what I do with it. So come along with me here. Just going to scoot you over here for a sec. So this is our primary topic today. Now this is the lowly 20 gallon, well actually 20 pound propane tank. It actually only holds about, let's say, anywhere from 4 to 5 gallons worth of propane in terms of volume. But yeah, everyone has this. Everyone knows what it is. People use it for barbecue cooking and things like that. But on the homestead, we use it for other things. And specifically on our homestead, we use it to cook, and we also use it to get our hot water. So if you search my other videos, you'll see my normal stove, my cooking range, that I've hooked up to a barbecue propane tank, or 20 pound tank. And that serves us for our primary kitchen cooking, and in terms of the actual hot water that we get inside our containers, we use these propane tanks to power that as well. And that also is on a regulated propane tank like this. And I would strongly suggest regulated propane hoses for your stove, for your range, and also for your hot water heater, just so you have the pressure consistent. Now, in terms of other uses for this, we know, and a lot of off-gridders know, that you could use it for supplemental heat. So for instance, right now, let me show you this guy. So I am loading up here a 1 pound tank. And that's the normal tanks that you see on Mr. Buddy heaters and some common things like Coleman outdoor stoves, things like that. And then for those things, for those applications, I normally go with this kind of a hose. It's an unregulated hose with the same kind of male fitting there that'll go into the actual appliance, if you will. So yeah, that's an unregulated hose. Now the Mr. Buddy heaters sometimes require a regulated hose, and I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of the way I pressurize my tanks, my 20 gallon tanks, and even my 1 gallon. So I really rarely use that 1 gallon tank anymore. I mean, that's only if we're on the road camping, things like that, and I don't want to take a whole big tank. Normally I just like to hook it up to a hose and cook outdoors and things like that with it. But this video is really about the use of propane on the homestead and off-grid, and how important that is. And so I know guys who use propane to run their refrigerator. Now, I wouldn't recommend that because it's highly inefficient, and because you're basically using heat to cool. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but also very inefficient in the summer. And so I would not recommend like an Amish style propane refrigerator / freezer. I would just go with electric and use solar power to run that. But in terms of other things like cooking, well, propane's really one of the few ways to do it off-grid that's clean. Now, it's not ultimately sustainable, but as you can see here, you can refill your tanks, and here's a little fitting that you can buy to go ahead and fill from a barbecue tank into these little guys, into these 1 pound tanks, the 20 pound to 1. And so yeah, that's a great thing. Now, in terms of filling up the actual propane, your barbecue tank, that's where the rub is. Now, at my local big box stores, whether it's Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, or TSC, all of these guys roughly charge about $16 for a refill. Now, TSC is a little bit cheaper. They charge, I think, roughly $3 a gallon. And so, yeah, it works about a little bit more than $12. But here's the thing, when you're off grid and as a prepper, I like to know that I always have access to the propane when I need it. So that's what I showed you at the beginning of this video. And so let me go ahead and show you that again. So yeah, it's this guy right here. This is my, let me back up. This is my 500-gallon propane tank. Now it's outside, we're off grid. We don't have it hooked up to any appliances in our shipping containers or anything like that. But I wanted to show you how I use it. So this is a little different, the setup, than normal propane tanks of this size. Here's the actual gauge to see how full it is. And here's where we actually can refill it. And then this guy is to open this whole tank up. This hose is going to go and run all the way to my propane tank here. And so let me show you how I fill these guys up. So I'm just going to make sure it's open, and I'm going to go ahead and open this valve up. And I'm going to see if you can hear that. I'm going to get close to it. I don't know if you can hear this hissing, but what I like to do is I like to just let these propane tanks regulate and fill to the same exact pressure of my propane, big propane tank. Now what that does is I'm not overfilling these things. I'm roughly using about the same, in terms of filling, the same amount of gallons. So I roughly have about 4 gallons in here when it's done. And like I said, you get these big tanks because of two reasons, not just for prepping reasons like myself, but because of the cost of the propane of this guy delivered versus going to a big box store. So roughly the cost at this moment in time is half. So at my normal TSC, I think they charge about $3, and that's the cheapest. And of course, if you go to Walmart or Lowe's or Home Depot, it's even more because you're switching out the entire canister. But in my particular case, I'm paying about $1.50 for the propane that I'm putting in here. So really, there's a lot of cost savings. And in terms of the tank here, well, that completely filled will probably last my family off grid here, maybe even up to 2 years. So if I just use it sparingly and really control what I'm using, yeah, I can make this thing last for a long time. And if you hear all this wind in the background, yeah, it's a really windy day here off grid. But we have to do what we have to do in terms of the work. So yeah, filling propane tanks, that's what I'm doing today. And yeah, it's a good way to save a lot of money and put back a lot of propane so that you can fill it anytime you want. One last thing I wanted to say again, if you go get this, go to a TSC, whatever, this hose is going to be pressurized. So you might kind of overfill these tanks. And so that's why they have weights and they usually measure it. With this kind of setup, a very simple system, I'm just regulating it by the internal pressure of this canister versus that. And they're both outside, so they're going to just equalize in pressure, and yeah, I'll have the exact same pressure, and everything's going to be good, and that I'm not going to be over pressurized. In terms of these little cans, though, you can't really over pressurize them too badly. And yeah, remember your old science. It's PV equals nRT, and so temperature and pressure are directionally equivalent. So in order to fill this little can higher, you need to lower the pressure. So a lot of people take these little canisters and put them in the freezer or the refrigerator to chill them down even more, so you can add more in terms of the volume inside of these little containers. But the way I use it, I just let it equalize at normal temperatures. It's the same temperature outside, inside, and that works fine too, because I have access to these bigger tanks, and of course this big old tank. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show today. Alrighty, hope this was informative. Shalom.